So, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to Tuesday's training. Today, we're going to be focusing on this concept of confusing our value with our worth. This is something that happens in transactional relationships. And let me define that a bit, because transactional is one of those techno-babble words. Transaction means I do one thing to get another thing. Like, if I do this, I'll get this instead. Like, I give you $2, you give me the donut. That would be a transaction. In relationships, if love becomes transactional, like I love you when you do this thing, or I love you when you behave this way, or when you're this kind of person, we're dealing with a transactional experience, which isn't love at all. It's actually a form of control and manipulation. And this concept of transactionalism is very prominent in narcissistic, abusive, or toxic relationships or systems. Anytime you find yourself questioning your value in a relationship, you need to step back and see what's going on from a transactional point of view. Am I loved only when I do X or Y? Am I given attention when I only do Z or B? What if I say no? How do they handle that? What if I change my boundaries or change my mind? What do they do? That exposes transactionalism very, very quickly, because if it is a transactional relationship, the other person is going to get upset. They're going to be frustrated with this experience because they're not getting what they want. And that's a good indicator that you're not with someone who's actually interested in who you are and isn't interested in what's called a reciprocal or connection-centered relationship. So that's what we want to think about when we deal with transactional relationships: consumers and suppliers. And if we're constantly supplying them with something and they're not reciprocating, we're dealing with transaction. Now, if we've grown up with, or we have been immersed in a relationship that's transactional, we're going to be conditioned into believing that our value, our worth as a human being, as a person, is dependent on the output we create. Sound familiar? Does that resonate? You're like, oh God, that's been my experience? Because if it is, you've been dealing with a toxic system. You're dealing with a system that hasn't seen you or honored you. You haven't been in a relationship where you are cared about for who you are, where you're nurtured and held and respected and loved for your beingness, for showing up, for existing. Okay? A lot of times, an easy way to kind of reveal this awareness to ourselves is if we have pets, we can look at the pet and we can say, I love the pet because the pet is here. Or we have children. I love my children because they exist. That's a connection-centered relationship. But if we're coming towards our pets like, I only love you when you don't bark, then that's transactional. And that's equating value or love, worthiness, with output. And we grow up in this kind of dynamic. We are conditioned to see ourselves as only valuable when we do things that make other people feel good. This is partly why we become very obsessed about why or what people think about us and how they feel about us. Because we think that our value is dependent on their approval, dependent on how they feel about us. And this creates a huge amount of anxiety within ourselves, because now we don't know if we're even stable, if the relationship's stable, if we are a stable person, because our identities, our values constantly shifted by how they're treating us, and we become hooked on chasing their approval. We lose sense of ourselves. We lose connection with our own goodness and beingness if we had it to begin with. Sometimes we grow up in systems and families where that wasn't even the starting point. The starting point was, hey, I get attention, praise, affection, touch, care, and play when I do this thing. Not just because I exist, but because I did this thing that made mom or dad happy. And that's a really, really critical component to understand what we're going through, because our own sense of value is shaped by this transactionalism, by this idea that our value is an output. And to really heal, we have to step back and start reclaiming our value as a being, as a person. There's this concept called personal autonomy that I teach quite a bit, and this is an aspect of it. Our beingness is worthy of value. Okay? This is what it means to have worth. It means to exist. Okay? That's it. It doesn't mean you've done something great. It doesn't mean you're contributing to the world or you're taking from the world. It means that you are here, being a part of it. If it's you sitting on a corner eating a cookie, that's valuable. Okay? If it's you enjoying a Netflix show, that's valuable. If it's you out there growing a business, it's valuable. If it's you working in a cubicle, it's valuable. If it's you buying toilet paper at Walmart, it's valuable. The beingness is what matters, not the doingness. Our value isn't connected to the doing, it's connected to the essence or existence. And this can be really difficult for us to accept, because suddenly we can't control what other people think or feel about us. And that's a good thing. As terrifying as that thought can be, that's actually a really important place for us to go, because this is where we start discovering who values us for who we are and who values us for what we do. And that's where we can start to discern who we want to connect with and who we don't. This is where we start to understand what really matters to us in a relationship versus being used and drained and absorbed in somebody else. This is where high-quality friendships, relationships, business relationships, purpose come from. They come from the value of being ourselves and embracing our intricacies and our shape, our quirks. Like earlier today, I'd posted an article on, or a post on how I came to love myself. It wasn't that I became the idealized version that I thought I should be so people would like me and include me and love me. It was that I finally let myself see myself as I am and receive that with love. I learned to love who I am, not who I thought I should be. And that's a common thing we do with codependency, is we develop a fantasy about the other person and about ourselves. And then we try to make those things real, rather than receiving the person for who they are and seeing where they fit with us, because we're willing to receive us for who we are and love ourselves first. So if you've been confusing your value with your behavior, it's time to step back and realize your value has to do with everything about the experience you feel about you. Okay? Your value is intrinsic, but only through love and only through a sincere acceptance or receiving of yourself will you ever connect with the experience, the energy of your innate value. And it's from there that your brilliance starts to come forward. It's where the light within you starts to get brighter, so much so that it shows up in real life. It guides your decisions. It guides your relationships. It guides your business or your job. It guides your life because you're accessed and connected within you to the brilliance that you are, rather than trying to shape and conform to some expectation you think is going to earn you love, approval, or connection in some way. So remember, guys, you are worth knowing, loving, and keeping, but we must come to love, know, and keep ourselves first. We must connect with our innate value and explore and discover it by shedding the shame and the programming, all the judgment, all the resistance, all the hate. We can start letting that go and start accessing what shows up when that's not there, which will be, sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's trauma, a lot of times it's joy, a lot of times it's like, wow, I'm back with myself, I can rest, I can be at peace, I can be okay. That's the magic, my friends. That's what we start to get access to. It's like, this is where I've always wanted to be anyway. I've just been seeking permission for it outside of myself all over the place. We don't have to do that anymore. Rather than seeking permission, we can come back and connect with ourselves and be our own authority and occupy the space of our brilliance and our energy, our beingness. And then we can change our lives in the way that we want, whatever happiness is for you. I'm a big fan of solitude. That brings me a lot of happiness. So you start to discover that the things you really want, you've always known. You've just had shame or judgment about them, and now you can receive them and expand from there, okay? So I encourage you to dig into this. Let yourself receive your beingness. Let yourself connect with you. And if you struggle with trauma, you're struggling with shame, you're struggling with that codependent programming, then I invite you to take my masterclass on healing codependency. So what it's going to do, it's going to give you access to the heal process, number one. Number two, it's going to tell you, it's going to show you what's really going on. It's going to teach you about what's called the discard trauma. It's going to teach you how that impacts our identity and then how we heal it. And it's going to connect you to the process that gives you that healing. And that's going to invite you to participate in my master course called Codependency Confidence, where you can transform that codependency, that insecurity, into confidence, into love, into your own brilliance. Okay? So the link is above, or you can just go to masterclass.freeself.com. And I appreciate you guys. Tomorrow we'll have another training on this kind of concept with codependency. If you have any questions, comment below. Let me know what you got out of this training. So if you're on here on Facebook or YouTube, just submit a comment below. And if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and share this video with anybody you think will benefit from it. Appreciate you guys being here, and remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping, and I will see you guys in our next training.